He had nothing to give you except kindness. A single dad scraping by, juggling 2 jobs and raising his little girl in a cramped, barely furnished apartment. Life had dealt him a rough hand, but his heart never hardened. So when he saw a shivering stranger outside on a cold night, he didn't hesitate. "You can sleep on the couch," he said. He didn't know her name, her story, or what the consequences might be. All he knew was, no one deserved to sleep in the cold. What he couldn't possibly imagine was that this one small act of compassion would set off a chain of events that would completely rewrite his destiny. The next morning, she made a phone call, a simple, 10-second conversation that turned his life upside down in the best way imaginable. This is the story of how a quiet gesture changed everything. And it starts with a couch, a stranger, and a heart that refused to turn away. She stood in the kitchen, phone trembling slightly in her hands, her eyes darting toward the tiny girl nibbling on toast at the table and the man who had offered her warmth without conditions. His face showed the wear of long days and sleepless nights, creased with silent worry, softened by kindness. The scent of coffee floated through the air, mixing with the quiet hum of a heater working overtime. She tapped in a number she hadn't dialed in years, hesitating only a moment before pressing call. On the other end, a voice answered, a familiar, authoritative, and surprised. She hadn't expected to feel this nervous. She explained quickly, but every word she said came from a place of deep conviction. She spoke of generosity, of sacrifice without expectation, of a home that had so little yet gave so much. The voice grew quiet. There was a pause, then only 5 words: "Tell him I'm on my way." Meanwhile, the man had begun clearing dishes, entirely unaware of the shift taking place. His thoughts were already back to reality, clocking in late, stretching paychecks, picking up his daughter from school with no idea what dinner would look like. Yet something in her gaze when she returned to the room made him pause. There was an intensity, almost reverence, in how she looked at him. She didn't say much, only that someone important was coming, and she hoped he wouldn't mind. His brow furrowed, but he nodded. He never asked for much, and this woman clearly had her reasons. That afternoon, a sleek car pulled up outside the weathered building. The engine purred to a stop, and the door opened slowly. A sharply dressed man stepped out, looking oddly out of place on the cracked pavement and among faded brick. He didn't knock right away. He stood for a moment, taking it all in. The door creaked open, and there they stood, the dad, his daughter peeking from behind his leg, and the woman who had made that call. The man extended his hand, introduced himself, and began speaking, not like someone superior, but like someone humbled. He shared how he'd known the woman years ago, how she'd helped him through a dark time, and how he had made a promise to repay her if the day ever came. She had never asked for anything until now. She gestured toward the father. "He's the one," she said simply. "He gave me shelter when I had nowhere to go. He protected my dignity. He reminded me what real goodness looks like." The man in the suit listened, watched, and nodded. He asked the father a few questions, not the kind that dig for credentials, but the kind that listen for character. They spoke about dreams once buried, forgotten, or outgrown. The dad hesitated, almost embarrassed to admit he once wanted to open a small restaurant. A place where people could eat real food and feel welcome, no matter their wallet. It sounded silly to him now, with unpaid bills stacked in a drawer and barely enough for groceries. But the suited man didn't laugh. Instead, he pulled out a small leather-bound book, scribbled something inside, and handed it over. Inside was a check, more than enough to start something. It came with a note: "You fed a stranger. Now let the world taste what you were meant to share." The dad stood speechless, his hands shaking as he held the gift. Gratitude flooded his eyes, but so did disbelief. Was this real? Could this actually be happening? The woman beside him simply smiled, her own eyes glistening. She had seen both the worst and best of people, and today, she was giving someone the chance to step into the life he had only dared to imagine. In the following days, things moved fast. The man in the suit introduced him to people: architects, mentors, marketers, people who believed in second chances and big hearts. The father learned quickly, absorbing everything with the urgency of someone who knew what it meant to go without. The daughter would sit on his lap during late-night planning sessions, tracing sketches of kitchen layouts and scribbling hearts in the margins. Laughter began filling their home again, not forced or scarce, but genuine and frequent. Hope had found its way back in, quiet at first, then stronger every day. And the woman who had made the call? She stayed for a while, helping where she could, disappearing when the spotlight turned her way. She never wanted fame or attention, only to make right on the faith someone once showed her. The restaurant eventually opened. Small, warm, alive with color and smells that stopped people mid-step on the sidewalk. It wasn't just food, it was a story. One that people came to hear as much as to taste. They asked about the man behind the counter with kind eyes and worn hands, and how he built something so rich in love. He never forgot the night she knocked on his door. Or the morning that followed. Or the call that turned struggle into possibility. Because sometimes, the greatest changes don't come with fanfare or fortune. They come quietly, on the heels of compassion and one call that finds its way into the right hands.